Sophia stood in the doorway of our small apartment, the one we had made a home together, her hands gripping the handle of the designer suitcase her mother had sent for her. Our newborn twins lay asleep in their crib, their tiny chests rising and falling, blissfully unaware that their mother was about to walk out of their lives. And me? I stood frozen, feeling the air grow heavier with every second that passed. "You don't have to do this," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Sophia looked at me then, really looked at me, and for the briefest moment, I saw hesitation in her eyes. It was there, the struggle, the part of her that still loved me, that still wanted to stay. But then it was gone, replaced by the cold, calculated mask she had worn ever since her mother had entered the picture. "My mother is right," she finally said, her voice sharp, almost robotic. "This life isn't for me." My stomach twisted. "This life?" I repeated, barely recognizing my own voice. "You mean our life? The one we built together?" She exhaled sharply, avoiding my gaze. "You don't understand, Michael. I never should have been here in the first place. My mother." I took a step forward, desperation clawing at my throat. "Your mother doesn't love you, Sophia. Not like I do. Not like our children do." For a second, just a second, she wavered. Her fingers tightened around the handle of her suitcase. Her lips parted as if she was about to say something. I wanted to believe that meant there was hope, that she would drop her bags and come back to me, to us. Then the sound of a car horn outside shattered whatever illusion I had left. Her mother's driver was waiting. The decision had already been made. She straightened her shoulders and lifted her chin. "I need a future, Michael. I need stability. You can't give me that." I felt something inside me snap. "I'm sorry, I didn't realize love, family, and loyalty weren't stable enough for you." She flinched, but she didn't argue. Instead, she turned to look at the sleeping babies in their crib. My heart pounded. She wouldn't just leave them. She couldn't. "Sophia," I pleaded, my voice barely steady, "don't do this to them." Her hand hovered over our son's tiny head, but she never touched him. Maybe she knew that if she did, she would break. Maybe she was already broken and just didn't want me to see it. "My mother said." I slammed my fist against the table, startling her. "I don't give a damn what your mother said. What about what you want? What about our children? You're just going to abandon them? Abandon me?" The moment the words left my mouth, I knew I had hit the target. Her jaw clenched, her eyes burned with something I couldn't quite name. Shame? Anger? Fear? "You think this is easy for me," she hissed. "You think I want to walk away?" I took another step forward, lowering my voice. "Then don't." Silence. I reached for her hand, but she pulled away like I had burned her. "I have to," she whispered, barely loud enough for me to hear. She turned toward the door, and panic surged through me. This wasn't happening. This couldn't be happening. "Sophia, if you leave now, there's no coming back from this." Her shoulders tensed. For a moment, I thought maybe, just maybe, she would stop. But then she walked out, suitcase rolling behind her, and my entire world collapsed in on itself. I stood there, staring at the open door, waiting for her to come back, to say she made a mistake, that she chose us over her mother's money and power. But she didn't. The car door slammed shut, the engine roared to life, and within seconds, she was gone. The apartment was suffocatingly quiet, too quiet, and then, as if sensing the change, one of our twins stirred, letting out a soft whimper that quickly turned into a cry. I turned toward them, feeling a sharp, unbearable pain in my chest. They had no idea that the mother who had carried them, who had whispered promises to them before they were even born, had just left them without a second glance. I stumbled toward the crib, my hands shaking as I picked up my daughter, cradling her against my chest. "It's okay, baby girl," I murmured, rocking her gently. "I've got you." I didn't know if I was saying it for her or for myself. I sank into the rocking chair beside the crib, staring blankly at the empty doorway. I had always imagined our future together. Sophia, me, and our twins. Late-night feedings, first steps, bedtime stories, growing old together. But now, that future had been ripped away from me. all because of one woman's influence. Her mother had always hated me. From the moment Sophia and I started dating, she had looked at me like I was dirt beneath her feet. She never missed an opportunity to remind me that I wasn't good enough, that I didn't have the right family background, the right money, the right name. And she had one. I clenched my jaw, gripping my daughter tighter as I swore under my breath. No, she hadn't one, because I wasn't going to let this destroy me. I looked down at my baby girl, then at my son, still sleeping peacefully. They were my family now, and no matter how hard it was, no matter how broken I felt in this moment, I was going to give them the best life possible, with or without Sophia. I pressed a gentle kiss to my daughter's forehead and wiped away a tear that had fallen onto her tiny cheek. I promise you, I whispered, I'll never leave you. And as the night stretched on, as exhaustion and grief threatened to pull me under, I held on to that one promise like a lifeline. I had lost my wife, but I wasn't going to lose my children. When you become a father, there's this unspoken promise you make, to always be there, to protect, to provide, to love. I never thought I'd have to keep that promise alone. The first few weeks after Sophia left were brutal. No, brutal doesn't even begin to describe it. It was like being thrown into a storm with no shelter, no warning, no life jacket. Just me, struggling to stay afloat while two tiny lives depended on me for everything. Nights became an endless cycle of feedings, diaper changes, and exhaustion so deep it felt like my bones were made of lead. My twins, barely weeks old, had no idea that their mother had walked out on them. No idea that the man holding them at 3 a.m, whispering lullabies with a voice cracked from exhaustion, was barely holding it together. And that's the thing. I had to hold it together. There was no other option. I was their father, the only parent they had left. I couldn't afford to break. But God, did I want to? Before Sophia left, I had imagined fatherhood differently. I thought I'd be sharing these moments with her, taking turns waking up for late-night feedings, marveling together at the tiny fingers and soft coos of our children, fighting over who got to hold them next. Instead, I was alone. The house, once filled with whispered dreams about our future, now felt hollow, an empty shell where my wife's absence was louder than any words she could have spoken. I can't tell you how many nights I sat in the dim glow of the nursery, my daughter in one arm, my son in the other, watching them sleep and wondering how the hell I was supposed to do this alone. How was I going to work? How was I going to provide? Would they even remember her? Would they ask about her one day, and what would I say? The thoughts were endless, relentless, suffocating. If the emotional toll wasn't enough, the financial reality hit me like a freight train. Sophia had come from money, a lot of money, and while I had always been financially stable, I wasn't wealthy by any means. We had built a comfortable life together, but when she left, she took more than just her presence. She took the security that came with being part of her world. I remember sitting at the kitchen table one night, bills scattered in front of me, calculator in hand, trying to figure out how I was going to stretch my savings. Formula, diapers, rent, utilities, it all added up fast. And the worst part? Childcare was a luxury I couldn't afford. Hiring a nanny? Out of the question. Daycare? Too expensive. I could barely afford the essentials, let alone the thousands it would take to put both kids into a decent care facility while I worked. That left me with exactly one option. Figure it out on my own. The thing about being a single father is that the world isn't built for us. When a woman is raising kids alone, people sympathize. They rally around her, offer help, give support. When it's a man, people assume you failed. At job interviews, I'd mention that I had newborn twins at home, and instead of admiration, I got doubt. How do you plan to juggle work and childcare? They'd ask. I had no answer. I wanted to say, the same way any mother would. I'd figure it out, but I saw it in their eyes, hesitation. A man raising babies alone? That didn't fit their image of a responsible, reliable employee. I started keeping it to myself, hiding the bags under my eyes, drinking more coffee than I knew was healthy, pushing through interviews with a desperation I hated to admit. And still, rejection after rejection. It was like the world had already decided. Fathers weren't meant to do this alone. One night, after another long day of searching for work, The weight of everything finally broke me. My son had been crying for an hour. My daughter refused to sleep, and I was running on fumes. I tried everything. Rocking, singing, even just holding them close. But nothing worked. And then, as I stood there, swaying in the middle of the nursery, feeling like the worst father in the world, my knees buckled. I sank to the floor, holding both of them against my chest, and for the first time since Sophia left, I cried. Not silent, dignified tears. Ugly, shaking sobs that I couldn't stop. "I'm sorry," I whispered over and over again, rocking them as if that would somehow fix everything. I wasn't enough. I wasn't strong enough. I wasn't capable enough. I was failing them. And worst of all, I wasn't sure I had it in me to keep going. I don't know how long I sat there, but at some point, exhaustion won. My body gave in. My mind shut down, and I must have dozed off. When I woke up, it was morning. The sunlight was filtering through the window, casting a warm glow on my babies' faces. They had both fallen asleep in my arms, their tiny hands gripping onto my shirt like I was their entire world. And that's when it hit me. I was their entire world. They didn't care that I wasn't rich. They didn't care that I hadn't slept in days, or that my bank account was running dry. All they cared about was that I was there, that I held them, that I loved them. And at that moment, I made a decision. I wasn't going to let this defeat me. I wasn't going to let Sophia's abandonment define our future. I wasn't going to be the man who crumbled under the weight of hardship. I was going to be the father they deserved. I pressed a kiss to both of their foreheads and wiped my tears away. "No more breaking down," I whispered, voice stronger than it had been in weeks. "No more doubting myself." From that day forward, I refused to be a victim of my circumstances. I was going to fight like hell to give my kids the life they deserved. I didn't know how yet, but I would figure it out, because that's what fathers do. And I was damn sure going to be the best one I could be. The moment I decided I wouldn't let Sophia's abandonment define my life, something shifted inside me. It wasn't a sudden burst of motivation or a cinematic moment of clarity. It was a slow, painful realization that if I didn't take control of my own fate, my twins would suffer. And that was unacceptable. So, I wiped my tears, put one foot in front of the other, and forced myself to keep moving. At first, my focus was simple. Find a job. Any job. I spent hours every day sending out resumes, knocking on doors, attending interviews. I dressed the part, rehearsed my answers, and walked into every office with a forced confidence I didn't always feel. And still, rejection after rejection. It wasn't my qualifications. I had experience, skills, but the second they learned I was a single father with newborn twins, the interest in my application vanished. I'd hear things like, "We're looking for someone with more flexibility. This role might require long hours. Would that be an issue? How do you plan to balance work and childcare?" It didn't take long for me to realize what they were really saying. They didn't believe I could handle both. It was frustrating. No, it was infuriating. Mothers did this all the time, and they were celebrated for it. But a father? Suddenly, I was unreliable, a risk. I wanted to scream at them. "You think I have a choice? You think I want to struggle?" But yelling wouldn't change anything. I needed to adapt. One afternoon, after yet another rejection, I walked into the grocery store with exactly $12.37 in my pocket. Diapers, formula, baby wipes. I stood in the aisle, staring at the prices, heart pounding in my chest. I didn't have enough. That was the moment it really hit me. I was failing. I couldn't even provide the basics for my kids. For the first time since Sophia left, panic set in. What if I couldn't do this? What if I was actually as unfit as the world seemed to believe? I felt like a failure. And then, my daughter grabbed my finger. She was too little to understand what was happening, but that tiny grip sent a wave of clarity through me. I was all they had. If I fell apart now, there would be no one to catch them. I forced myself to take a breath. There had to be another way. That night, as I rocked my son to sleep, an idea started forming. I had been applying for jobs that fit my past experience, corporate roles, office jobs, things that required long hours and childcare I couldn't afford. What if I was looking at this all wrong? What if, instead of trying to fit into someone else's world, I built something of my own? The thought terrified me. I had no business experience, no funding, no connections. But what I did have, a reason. And sometimes, a reason is enough. I stayed up all night, brainstorming ideas. What was something I could do from home? Something that didn't require huge upfront costs? And then it hit me, baby products. I had spent the past few months immersed in everything related to babies, clothes, accessories, essentials. I knew what worked, what was overpriced, what parents actually needed. I could create custom baby products, things that were functional but personal. I grabbed an old notebook and started scribbling down ideas. Personalized onesies, custom baby blankets, unique milestone markers for parents to track their baby's growth. The more I wrote, the more the idea took shape. I knew it wouldn't be easy. Hell, it would probably be the hardest thing I'd ever done. But the alternative? Spending my days begging for jobs that didn't want me, while my children went without. That wasn't an option. The next morning, I started small. I found a cheap supplier for blank onesies and fabric paint. I taught myself how to design and print custom baby clothing. My first attempt? A disaster. The paint smudged, the fabric bunched up. It looked like something a 5-year-old had made. But I didn't stop. I watched tutorials. I experimented. I kept trying, failing, trying again. Eventually, I got better. With my last bit of savings, I built a small online store. Nothing fancy, just a basic website with a few designs. Then, I took a deep breath and posted my first ad. Days passed. Nothing. I checked my website obsessively, refreshing the page over and over. Zero sales. Doubt crept in. Had I just wasted what little money I had left? And then, a notification. My first sale. It was a small order, just one onesie, customized with a baby's name. But it was everything. It was proof that someone, somewhere, believed in what I was doing. That night, as I packaged that tiny onesie, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time, hope. One sale turned into 2. 2 turned into 5. Soon, word of mouth started spreading. Mothers loved the personal touch. Friends told friends. I started getting requests for different designs. I wasn't making millions, but I was making enough. Enough to keep a roof over our heads. Enough to put food on the table. Enough to look at my kids and say, we're going to be okay. One evening, as I was finishing up orders, my phone buzzed. An email from a baby boutique owner. She had seen my products online and wanted to talk about a partnership. I stared at the screen, my heart racing. This was it. The moment I realized, this wasn't just survival anymore. I wasn't just getting by. I was building something real. That night, as I tucked my twins into bed, I whispered the same promise I had made months ago. I'll never let you down. Only this time, I believed it. Because I wasn't that broken man anymore. I wasn't waiting for someone to save us. I was saving us myself. And nothing, not Sophia, not her mother, not the doubts that once consumed me, was going to stop me now. Starting a business wasn't the hard part. Keeping it alive was. Every day felt like a battle, a constant push against doubt, exhaustion, and the nagging fear that this whole thing would collapse before it had a chance to grow. But I had no choice. I was all my twins had. And that meant failure wasn't an option. I worked through the nights, my twins asleep beside me in their crib, while I printed designs, answered customer messages, and figured out how to run a business on pure willpower alone. During the day, I was a father first, feeding, changing, soothing, playing. During the night, I was an entrepreneur, hunched over my tiny desk, hands stained with fabric paint, running on coffee and sheer determination. Some nights, I barely slept at all. I'd hear one of the twins stir, and exhaustion would claw at me, telling me to let them cry for just 1 minute longer. But I couldn't. I wasn't just their dad. I was everything to them, and that meant pushing through, even when my body screamed for rest. There were so many mistakes. I priced my products too low at first, barely making enough to break even. I trusted the wrong suppliers, ended up with defective materials, and had to refund customers out of my own pocket. One month, I miscalculated shipping costs so badly that I lost money on every order. I wanted to quit so many times. But every time I thought about giving up, I'd hear my twins laugh, see their tiny hands reaching for me, and I'd remember. This was for them. So I kept going. I researched, I learned, I adjusted. I raised my prices, negotiated better deals, and started handling every single part of the business myself to save costs. Little by little, it worked. Orders increased. Mothers loved my designs, and before I knew it, my online store was gaining traction. One day, I woke up to 50 orders overnight. 50. I stared at my phone in disbelief, heart pounding. That was the moment I knew. This wasn't just a side hustle anymore. This was a real business. But with success came new problems. I was still just one person, juggling a growing company while raising twins alone. I needed help. I had no choice but to adapt. I hired a part-time assistant, someone to help process orders and manage customer service. I turned my tiny living room into a makeshift workspace, shelves lined with baby clothes, shipping boxes stacked in every corner. I had to set boundaries, dedicating mornings to my twins, afternoons to work, and nights to catching up on both. It wasn't easy. There were days I missed out on milestones, their first crawl, their first attempt at a word, because I was buried in work. The guilt ate me alive. But then, one night, as I sat on the floor with them, exhausted from a 12-hour workday, my daughter reached out and touched my face. "Dada," she whispered, my first name from her lips. Tears blurred my vision. This was why I was doing it. For them. For our future. For the life I had promised them when Sophia walked out the door. The more successful I became, the more people started to notice, including Sophia's mother. One afternoon, I received an unexpected phone call. I knew the number immediately. Her. My stomach twisted, but I answered. "Michael," she greeted me smoothly, her voice as cold and detached as I remembered. "What do you want?" I asked, cutting straight to the point. She sighed, as if my existence exhausted her. "I heard about your little business. I must admit, I'm surprised. I never thought you had the capability to succeed." I clenched my jaw. I didn't need her approval. She got to the point. "Sophia has been reconsidering some things." She abandoned her children," I interrupted. "There's nothing left to reconsider." She was pressured, her mother said, voice clipped. She made a mistake. But mistakes can be corrected. I laughed bitterly. "Not this one." Silence. Then she lowered her voice, as if she were offering me something I should be grateful for. "Michael, if you want, I can help you. I have connections. Investors. I can turn your business into something much bigger." I knew what she was really saying. She wanted control. The same way she had controlled Sophia's life. She wanted to do the same to me. "No," I said, my voice steady. "You're being foolish," she snapped. "No," I repeated. "I'm being free." And with that, I ended the call. I had fought too hard to build something on my own. I wasn't about to let the person who tore my family apart step back in and dictate my future. That night, I watched my twins sleep, feeling something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. I had started with nothing, just heartbreak and 2 babies who depended on me. Now, I had a business, a home, a future. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was thriving. And the best part? I had done it without Sophia, without her mother, without anyone but myself. I had proven them all wrong. I pressed a kiss to my son's forehead, then my daughter's. "We made it," I whispered. For the first time since Sophia left, I truly believed it. For all the years I had known Sophia, I believed she had everything. Money, power, an easy life paved by privilege. But what I had failed to see, what she had failed to see, was that none of it truly belonged to her. It was her mother's world, and Sophia was merely a pawn in a game she had never learned to play for herself. After she left, I stopped thinking about what her life was like. I had more important things to worry about: my twins, my business, my own survival. But fate has a funny way of circling back. Because while I was clawing my way up from the bottom, Sophia was slowly realizing that she had traded love for an empty throne. From the outside, Sophia's life looked untouched by hardship. She lived in a sprawling mansion in the most exclusive part of town, surrounded by marble floors, crystal chandeliers, and servants who catered to her every whim. She had a closet filled with designer clothes, a car that cost more than my apartment, and a mother who reminded her at every opportunity that she had made the right decision. "You would have been miserable with Michael," her mother would say, sipping imported tea from a delicate china cup. "You deserve a life of comfort." Sophia wanted to believe it. She wanted to believe that leaving had been the right choice, that she had escaped a small life in favor of something greater. But then the nights would come, and the house would be too quiet, the luxury too cold, the bed too empty. She had walked away from the only people who had truly loved her, and the weight of that decision was beginning to crush her. At first, she told herself she was just adjusting. Her mother had reassured her that it was natural to feel unsettled after such a big change, that soon she would see the benefits of her decision. And so, Sophia tried to fit into this new world. She went to charity galas, shopping sprees, high society brunches filled with women who spoke about vacations in the Maldives and the latest fashion trends. But nothing felt real. She found herself glancing at her phone more often than she wanted to admit, her fingers hovering over my name, over old pictures of us, over the last photos she had taken of our babies before she left. She never dialed. She didn't know what she would say. Instead, she buried herself in distractions. She let her mother arrange dates with wealthy businessmen, went to social events, tried to pretend she was the same Sophia she had always been. But when she lay in bed at night, the truth gnawed at her. She had lost something she would never get back. One evening, at a lavish dinner party, someone mentioned a local entrepreneur who had built an entire business from scratch. "Amazing story," a man across the table said. "Single father. Started with nothing. Now his company is booming." Sophia wasn't listening at first. She was swirling the wine in her glass, barely paying attention to the conversation. Then she heard the name. Michael. Her stomach twisted. She froze, her breath catching in her throat as she tried to process what she had just heard. The words that followed hit her like a sledgehammer. Incredible guy. Built the whole thing while raising twins alone? Honestly, I don't know how he did it. He's an inspiration. His brand, Little Warriors, it's everywhere now. Sophia's hands trembled. Twins. They were talking about our children. Her children. For the first time in a long time, she felt fear. Because it had never truly occurred to her that I might not have needed her after all. That maybe, just maybe, I had moved on without her. That night, she couldn't sleep. She tossed and turned in her silk sheets, her mind racing with thoughts she didn't want to have. What did my life look like now? Were the twins happy? Did they even remember her? Would I ever forgive her? Unable to stop herself, she grabbed her phone, opened her laptop, and did something she had been too afraid to do before. She looked me up, and what she found left her breathless. My name wasn't just a mention in a dinner party conversation. It was everywhere. Interviews, articles, photos of me, standing beside racks of baby clothes, talking about my journey as a single father turned business owner. And then, the video, a recent news segment featuring me and the twins. She clicked on it without thinking, and within seconds, her world shattered. The video opened with footage of me in my workshop, smiling as I packed orders, adjusting tiny baby clothes on a rack. I looked different. Not broken. Not struggling. Stronger. Happier. Then the screen cut to the twins. Laughing. Running. Playing in a park. And as she watched their tiny faces, so full of life, so full of joy, Sophia broke down. Because they didn't look like children who had been abandoned. They didn't look like children who had suffered in her absence. They looked happy, loved, whole. Without her, she clutched the phone, her heart racing. The interviewer's voice filled the room. Michael, what's your biggest motivation? The camera zoomed in on me, and my answer was immediate. My kids. They saved me. Sophia gasped, pressing a hand over her mouth. At the end of the day, I don't regret a thing, I continued. Because everything I've built, everything I've achieved, it's all for them. And I wouldn't change a single moment. The video ended. The room was silent. And Sophia? She was shaking. Because in that moment, she realized the horrible, undeniable truth. She had made the worst mistake of her life. And now? She was too late to fix it. Sophia's hands trembled as she stared at the black screen of her laptop, her breath coming in uneven gasps. The video had ended, but the images refused to leave her mind. Michael. Our children. They looked so happy. Without me. The reality of it clawed at my chest, suffocating me more than my mother's perfectly curated life ever could. I had left them, convinced that I was choosing the better path, the life I was meant to have. I had told myself it was for the best, that they would struggle without me, that Michael wouldn't be able to handle it alone. But I was wrong. He had built something beautiful, something successful. And worse, he didn't need me. A sharp knock on my bedroom door pulled me from my spiral of thoughts. Sophia? My mother's clipped voice sliced through the heavy silence. Dinner's ready. Don't make our guests wait. I swallowed hard, forcing my voice to stay steady. I'm not hungry. There was a pause. Then, in the icy tone that had dictated my entire life, she said, "Don't be dramatic." Dramatic? That was what she called this? I closed my eyes, gripping the edges of my desk. I had given up my family for this, for her approval, for a life that suddenly felt like a gilded cage, cold and suffocating. Another knock. This time sharper. I said, "I'm not hungry, Mother," I snapped, surprising even myself. Silence. Then her footsteps retreated. I let out a shaky breath, running a hand through my hair. My heart was pounding so hard it hurt. I needed to see them. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the way Michael had looked in that interview. Strong, confident, alive. I saw the twins laughing, playing, living a life that had no space for me in it. By morning, I had made up my mind. I needed to see them. Even if Michael slammed the door in my face. Even if my children no longer recognized me. I needed to face what I had done. But first, I had to get out of this house. I stepped into the dining room, where my mother was already seated, sipping tea as she scrolled through her phone. She barely looked up when I entered. "You ignored dinner last night," she remarked, setting her cup down. "That's rude." I clenched my jaw. "I wasn't hungry." She raised an eyebrow, finally looking at me properly. "Something's wrong." I exhaled, gripping the back of the chair across from her. "I need to see Michael." Her expression didn't change. "That's a terrible idea. I need to see my children." "They're not your children anymore, Sophia," she said flatly. "You made your choice. And look where it got you." Something snapped inside me. "Where did it get me, Mother?" I shot back. "Alone? Miserable? Trapped in this house like a perfectly decorated doll?" Her eyes narrowed. "Watch your tone." "No," I said, my voice shaking. "I've spent my entire life watching my tone, watching my words, letting you dictate every decision I've ever made. And I listened to you when you told me to leave them." She set her phone down, studying me as if I were a child throwing a tantrum. "And now you regret it?" The question hung in the air. I felt like she already knew the answer. "Michael has built a life without you, Sophia," she continued, her voice calm, controlled. "You showing up now, what do you think that will accomplish?" I swallowed the lump in my throat. "I don't know." Her lips curved into something cruelly amused. "Then let it go. Let it go." I looked around the dining room, at the expensive chandelier, the perfect floral arrangement in the center of the table, the vast space that felt emptier than ever. I thought about my children, the home I had abandoned, the man I had once loved. And suddenly, I saw my mother for who she really was. Not a protector, not a mentor, a woman who had spent her entire life controlling everyone around her. I had been one of her greatest successes, but not anymore. I stood up. She didn't move. "Where are you going?" I grabbed my coat, walking toward the door. "To fix what I can." Her voice was sharp as a blade. "If you walk out that door, don't expect to walk back in." I froze, hand on the doorknob. That was it. The final test. I turned back, looking her dead in the eye. I wasn't planning on it. And then I walked out. The drive to Michael's place felt like the longest of my life. Every mile was a step toward the consequences of my own actions. Would he even let me in? Would my children even know who I was? I clenched the steering wheel, forcing myself not to turn around. This was my doing. I had to face it. By the time I reached his neighborhood, my hands were shaking. I parked outside his home, my heart pounding so hard I thought I might be sick. The house was simple, nothing like the mansion I had left behind, but it looked warm. The lights inside were on. And then, the front door opened. Michael stepped outside, holding a bag of trash, his hair slightly messy, his expression tired but peaceful. And for the first time, I saw what I had never allowed myself to see before. He was happy, even without me, especially without me. I swallowed hard, stepping out of the car before I lost my nerve. He turned, his eyes landing on me. The bag of trash hit the ground. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then, his voice, low and guarded. "What are you doing here?" I exhaled. I saw the interview. His jaw tightened, and I felt my throat close. I had so much to say, but no words felt right. So I said the only thing that mattered. "I'm sorry." Michael's face remained unreadable. "For what?" I blinked, my vision blurring with sudden tears. "For everything. For leaving. For listening to my mother. For thinking I could ever be happy without them." Michael exhaled, shaking his head. "You can't just come back now, Sophia." I nodded, tears slipping down my cheeks. "I know." Silence stretched between us. Then, he stepped forward slightly, looking me in the eye. "They don't remember you," he said softly. The pain of it ripped through me like a knife. I covered my mouth, nodding again. "I deserve that." Michael studied me for a long moment, then sighed. "I don't hate you, Sophia, but we don't need you anymore." Tears fell freely now. I nodded one last time, stepping back. I needed to see it for myself." Michael said nothing, and as I turned back toward my car, my heart breaking all over again, I knew I had lost them forever. I drove away from Michael's house feeling like my entire body had been hollowed out. The night air was cool, but I could barely breathe. My hands shook on the steering wheel, my vision blurred with unshed tears. It was over. I had come, hoping, what, exactly? That he would forgive me? That I could somehow piece together the life I had so carelessly thrown away? But the truth had been staring me in the face the moment Michael looked at me with nothing in his eyes. Not love, not anger, just indifference. And that hurt more than anything, because it meant I was no longer a part of his world, no longer a part of their world. I don't know how long I drove before pulling into an empty parking lot. The silence was deafening. I leaned forward, gripping the steering wheel, and let the first sob tear through me. This was my doing. I had believed my mother's words. I had let her convince me that leaving Michael was the right choice, that I was choosing a better life. But what had I actually chosen? An empty house? A mother who only saw me as a reflection of her own ambitions? A life so perfectly polished it had lost all meaning? I had walked away from a man who had loved me more than anything. I had abandoned 2 innocent children who had needed me. And now, I had to live with the fact that they had learned to exist without me, thrive without me. Michael had told me as much, his words delivered without cruelty, but with a finality that shattered me. "We don't need you anymore." I watched her leave, my hands shoved deep into my pockets, my heart a tangled mess of emotions I didn't have the energy to sort through. There was a time when seeing Sophia would have destroyed me, a time when I would have begged her to stay, fought for her, convinced her that we could rebuild everything she had thrown away. But that time had passed. I wasn't the broken man she had left behind. I wasn't waiting for her anymore. And my children? They didn't even know who she was. That was the part that hit her the hardest. I had seen it in her eyes, the way her breath hitched when I said it. "They don't remember you." It wasn't meant to be cruel. It was just the truth. And the truth had finally caught up to her. She had left, believing I would crumble without her. Instead, I had risen. And now, there was no room left for her here. I don't know how long I sat in that parking lot before my phone rang. I almost ignored it. But then I saw the name on the screen. Mother. I hesitated, then picked up. "Where are you?" she asked immediately, her tone clipped. I swallowed the lump in my throat. "Out." A pause. Then, "Did you go see him?" Of course, she knew. She always knew. I closed my eyes, gripping the phone tighter. "Yes." She sighed like I was a child who had just embarrassed her in public. "Sophia, what did I tell you? That man is nothing. You have no reason to." "They don't remember me." I cut in, my voice hoarse. Silence. For the first time in my life, my mother had nothing to say. "I left my family for you," I whispered. "And for what?" "Sophia," she started, but I didn't let her finish. "I'm not coming back, Mother." Her sharp intake of breath was almost satisfying. Almost. I ended the call before she could speak again. I had wasted too many years living by her rules. And for what? To end up alone? After Sophia left, I went back inside, closing the door behind me. The twins were still asleep, their tiny faces relaxed, peaceful. I crouched beside them, brushing my fingers over my daughter's soft curls. This was what mattered. Not the past. Not Sophia. This. The life I had built for them. The security, the love, the happiness. I had spent too long mourning what I had lost. Now, I only cared about what I had gained. The sun was rising when I finally got back to my apartment. Everything felt different now. I had no illusions left. Michael would never take me back. My children would never know me as their mother. And maybe that was what I deserved. I took one last look at my reflection in the mirror. The woman staring back at me wasn't the girl who had left her family behind for money and status. She was someone else now. Someone who had lost everything. But maybe, just maybe, that was the price I had to pay to finally be free. With one final breath, I walked away. And this time, I didn't look back. 9 and 10, moving forward without her. I woke up the morning after Sophia's visit feeling lighter than I had in years. I had expected to feel something. Maybe anger. Maybe pain. Maybe a lingering ache from seeing her face again. But there was nothing. No sadness. No resentment. Just relief. Because last night had proved something I hadn't fully realized until now. I was free. Sophia was nothing more than a shadow of my past, and she had no hold over my life anymore. I had built something without her, something stronger, something unshakable, and I wasn't about to let anything, or anyone, disrupt it. I went about my morning as usual, made breakfast, played with the twins, answered emails from customers. It felt like just another day, which, in a way, was the biggest sign of all. Sophia's return should have shaken my world. But it hadn't. I had already rebuilt my life. And now, I was moving forward. That afternoon, I had a meeting with a group of investors who were interested in helping expand Little Warriors into retail stores. 5 years ago, I wouldn't have even imagined something like this. Back then, I was just a struggling single father, trying to make ends meet. But today, I walked into that meeting as a man who had earned his place in the world. The deal was a success. When I left the office, I checked my phone, scrolling through emails from customers, parents thanking me for what my business had done for them. And as I read those messages, a realization settled deep in my chest. This was the life I was meant to have. Not one trapped under someone else's expectations. Not one spent chasing after people who never valued me. This, my children, my business, my future. That's all I needed. I didn't see or hear from Sophia after that night. I don't know where she went. Maybe she tried to fix things with her mother. Maybe she left town. Maybe she stayed, watching from a distance as we continued on without her. But it didn't matter anymore. She had made her choice, and we had made ours. The past was the past, and I had no reason to look back. That night, as I tucked the twins into bed, I found myself pausing by their cribs, just watching them sleep. 2 little miracles who had saved me in ways they would never fully understand. They didn't need to know how hard it had been. They didn't need to know about the nights I had spent crying, about the rejections, about the fear that had nearly swallowed me whole. All they needed to know was that I had never given up on them, and I never would. As I turned off the lights and stepped out of their room, I felt something settle inside me. Something strong. Something unshakable. This was my life, and it was just getting started. I wasn't looking for anything when I walked into that cafe. Just another job site, another contract, another set of specs to measure twice and cut once. My name's Miles Carter, 44, general contractor, and halfway through the act of rebuilding my life after a divorce that left more than just a dent. I've got a teenage daughter, Jessa, who spends most of her time at her mother's house, reminding me with every short text and occasional visit that time doesn't slow down for anyone. I build houses, decks, and storefronts, but my own life has felt half-finished for a long time. The cafe was tucked between a yoga studio and a florist shop, with a chalkboard sign out front that read, "Life happens. Coffee helps." Corny, but charming. Inside, the place smelled like vanilla syrup and ambition. That's where I met her, Rain Morgan. She was wiping down a counter with a dish towel that had seen better days, her hair in a messy bun, not in the romanticized Instagram way, but in the "I've been here since 6 a.m. and I'm still answering supplier emails" kind of way. She wore tired like it was stitched into her clothes, but not in a way that diminished her. It made her real. She looked up as I stepped in and gave me a nod, not a smile, not a greeting, just a nod, like we were already in the middle of something. I introduced myself, said I was here to check out the remodeling project, and she tossed me a binder of ideas without saying a word. That should have annoyed me, but it didn't. There was something magnetic about her presence, like a quiet force of nature that didn't need to prove anything to anyone. Over the next few days, we talked more. Slowly at first. She had this dry wit, sharp as a box cutter. Called the ceiling tiles corporate sadness. Referred to the espresso machine as her diva and stainless steel. I laughed more than I expected to, and she noticed. "You always laugh like it surprises you," she said once, pouring me a cup of something dark and bold. Like you forgot how. She wasn't wrong. I'd been coasting on quiet for too long. We started meeting after hours to go over design updates. She wanted reclaimed wood for the counter. I told her about this salvage yard I knew an hour out of town, and we ended up spending a whole Saturday digging through old planks and rusted nails. She wore boots that didn't match and sang along to Stevie Nicks like she meant every word. That day, I caught myself watching her, not in a lustful way, but in that dangerous space between admiration and hope. That maybe this was something. Then came the name, Silas Grant. We were back at the cafe, laying out floor samples when she mentioned him. "Silas says walnut's too dark for the room," she said offhandedly. I nodded, making a note. "Friend of yours?" She glanced up, hesitated. "Best friend since college." The kind of answer you file away for later. Over the next few weeks, his name popped up more. "Silas said the lighting feels too sterile. Silas thinks I should go for open shelving. Silas has a thing about exposed brick." At first, I didn't care. People have friends. Opinions. It wasn't my place to challenge it. But then I noticed the way her tone changed when she said his name. Softer. Like muscle memory. One day, we were taking a break on the back steps of the cafe. She passed me a cold bottle of water, and I asked, casual as I could, "You and Silas ever date?" She didn't flinch. Just nodded, slow and deliberate. "Yeah, a long time ago. It didn't work out." Then she added, "But we're still close. He's family." That word again, family. A shield and a sword, depending on who's wielding it. I told myself I was fine with it. I'd been through worse. I wasn't the jealous type. But Silas didn't make it easy. He started showing up to the cafe more often. Always just when we were deep in conversation or laughing a little too hard. He never outright said anything rude, but there was this edge to him. Like he was always measuring me, trying to find the weak spot in the wall. He'd come in and make himself at home, leaning behind the counter like he worked there, tossing Rain a pastry from someplace they used to go to all the time. Rain would laugh, almost embarrassed, and I'd suddenly feel like a third wheel at my own job site. I hated how easily he inserted himself, how effortlessly she allowed it. I told myself not to overthink it, that what I had with Rain was building into something solid. She smiled at me differently than she did at anyone else. She texted me late at night just to say she couldn't sleep. When I mentioned missing Jessa, she listened, really listened. Not the kind of half-hearted nod people give when they're waiting for their turn to talk. But it was getting harder to ignore the way Silas hovered. Like he wasn't just a friend, but a permanent shadow over everything Rain touched. I started asking myself questions I didn't like. Was I just a placeholder until he decided to swoop back in? Did she even see how deep his roots still ran? One night, as I packed up my tools, Rain walked me out. The street was quiet, and the light above the cafe door flickered with a soft buzz. She reached out, her hand brushing mine. "Thank you," she said. "For everything." I wanted to say something meaningful. Instead, I asked, "Does he know you're seeing me?" Her expression tightened just enough to confirm what I already feared. "No," she said. "It's complicated." I nodded. "Yeah, I'm starting to see that." And just like that, what had felt like sparks and coffee turned into shadows and doubt. I didn't know what came next, but I knew I wasn't walking blind anymore. It was a warm Saturday evening, the kind that smelled like fresh-cut grass and smoke from a neighbor's grill. Rain had invited me to her place for dinner, a backyard get-together with what she called her inner circle. I'd offered to come early and help set up, maybe sneak in a quiet moment or two before the guests arrived. I had no idea I was walking into a test I didn't sign up for. The moment I stepped onto her back deck, I spotted him. Silas. Already there, leaning against the railing like he owned the place, beer in hand, laughing at something Rain said. She was barefoot, wearing a sundress that caught the last bit of sun, and he was standing so close their shoulders almost touched. That laugh she gave him, it wasn't romantic, it was nostalgic. But nostalgia has its own kind of intimacy, the kind you don't share if you're building something new with someone else. I raised my hand in a casual wave, masking the tension that surged through my chest. Hey, I said, keeping it light. Rain smiled warmly. Silas gave me a nod. No words, just a nod. Cold, clipped, and meant to put me in my place. Rain handed me a pair of tongs. You're on steak duty, she said with a wink. I forced a smile and headed to the grill, telling myself to focus on the moment, not the man circling it like a vulture. But the air was already off. It wasn't one big thing, it was 1,000 small ones. He hovered while I grilled, commented on my technique. You sure about that temp? Rain likes hers medium rare, not medium. Then later, that cut's tricky, you might dry it out. Each remark delivered with a smirk and a sip of his beer. I kept my cool. I'd been on job sites where grown men threw punches over roofing material. I wasn't about to let a smug ex push me into something I'd regret. When the guests arrived, I played host right alongside Rain. I handed out drinks, made small talk, even got a few laughs from her friend Becca, who told me I was refreshingly normal. Rain's hand brushed my back once, and I thought, maybe I'm just being paranoid. Maybe Silas is just awkward. Then the conversation shifted. We were all seated around the table on the deck, plates full, wine poured, music humming low in the background. Someone brought up politics. I can't even remember who. Just a passing comment about the economy or the mayor or something. I chimed in with my usual honest but measured. I'm not the type to bulldoze a dinner party with opinions. But Silas seized it like bait. That's not entirely accurate, he said. Actually, if you read the legislation. I tried to clarify my point, calmly. But he cut in again. You're oversimplifying it, Miles. There's a lot you're missing. I glanced at Rain. She looked down at her plate, chewing slowly. No sign she was going to step in. I kept my voice even. I'm not claiming to be an expert. Just giving my take on it. Silas leaned forward, eyes sharp. Yeah, but your take's misinformed. Rain, back me up here. It was the first time he directly invoked her name like that, dragging her into the tension. She looked caught, like a deer frozen between headlights. I think you're both just looking at it differently, she said, trying to play neutral. But her eyes flicked toward him, not me. That was the shift. The exact second I realized I wasn't debating ideas anymore. I was being tested. Silas wasn't looking for truth. He was asserting dominance. And she was letting him. He leaned back, scoffing. You don't even know what you're talking about. Rain's just too nice to say it out loud. The words hit like a hammer. I looked around the table. The laughter had died. Becca was frowning. One of the guys, Toby, shifted uncomfortably in his chair. I glanced at Rain again, expecting, hoping she'd speak up. Say something. Anything. She didn't. I swallowed the heat rising in my throat and set down my fork. You don't have to agree with me, Silas. But the condescension's not necessary. He laughed. It's not condescension if it's true. That's when Rain finally stood up. Okay, let's just cool it, all right? Her voice was tight, performative. She looked at the group. Sorry, everyone. It's just a spirited discussion. Silas stood too. No, it's fine. I don't need to be lectured on my own deck. It's not your deck, I said, low but clear. He turned to Rain. You gonna let him talk to me like that? Her silence was answer enough. He scoffed, muttered something under his breath, and walked off. The screen door slammed behind him. Everyone sat there, stunned. No one spoke. Becca mumbled something about needing to call a sitter, and the others started making excuses to leave. Within 10 minutes, the dinner Rain had so carefully planned was just us. Leftovers, uneaten cake, and the buzz of a porch light. She pulled me aside near the kitchen. Her eyes were glassy, voice shaky. You need to apologize to him. I blinked. Excuse me. He was here before you. He's family. And he's more important than you. There it was. A clean, brutal sentence. No stutters. No second guessing. I didn't argue. I didn't shout. I didn't even ask her to take it back. I just looked at her, really looked. And for the first time, I saw what had been there all along. I was the visitor. He was the foundation. She turned away, probably expecting me to fight for my place. But I'd already decided, if I had to fight for it, I didn't have one. I didn't slam the door. Didn't raise my voice. Just walked down the front steps of Rain's house and toward my truck like I was leaving any other gathering. I didn't feel anger. Not yet. What I felt was weight. Like someone had draped a soaked tarp over my chest, and with every breath, it sagged lower. Her words echoed with perfect clarity as I climbed into the cab and shut the door. He was here before you, and he's more important than you. I sat there for a moment, the engine off, hands on the steering wheel. The porch light behind me flickered once, then steadied. I could still hear the faint creak of her screen door as it settled closed. She didn't come after me. I didn't expect her to. I started the truck and backed out slow, gravel crunching beneath my tires, the sound louder than it should have been in the quiet street. No music. No calls. I didn't even glance at my phone. I needed something I could control. So I drove. Past the school Jessie used to go to when she was little. Past the hardware store I once helped rebuild after a storm. Past the 24-hour diner with the burnt coffee and sticky booths. I didn't have a destination in mind. Sometimes movement is enough. My dad used to say that when the answers don't come, get your hands busy. Let the body outrun the mind. That night, driving became my version of that. Mile after mile, headlights carving through the dark, I let silence stretch out and do its work. I thought about Jessa. About how she used to ask me questions that split me in half. Like, why don't you live with mommy anymore? Or, did you stop loving her? I'd always answer carefully. Because kids don't need all the pieces, they just need to know they're not one of the ones that got dropped. I never talked badly about her mother. But now I wondered what Jessa would think if she saw me like this. Saw the man who'd promised never to be a doormat again, quietly walking away from a woman who didn't choose him. I ended up at the job site on 3rd Street. A half-finished deck sat like a skeleton frame under the moonlight, fresh beams already graying at the edges. I climbed out of the truck and walked across the plywood, boots thudding against the boards. I sat on a beam with my feet dangling over the edge, staring at the structure like it could tell me something I hadn't figured out yet. In my last marriage, I stayed too long. I kept hoping love would grow back like hair after a bad cut. That if I worked harder, provided better, stayed patient, the silence would fill with warmth again. But it didn't. It just got quieter and colder. And eventually, I realized I was alone in a house built for two. That moment, when I packed my tools, signed the papers, split holidays with Jessa, it taught me something painful. When someone shows you your rank in their life, don't ask for a recount. And yet here I was again. Not yelling, not fighting, just leaving. I slept in the truck that night, reclining the seat back and pulling my jacket over me like a blanket. It wasn't comfortable, but it was mine. The next morning, I got up, walked to the corner diner, and ordered eggs and toast like it was any other workday. When I finally turned my phone back on, I had 6 messages from Rain. The first was casual. Hey, can we talk? Then came the defense. You took that the wrong way. I didn't mean it how it sounded. Then the guilt. I needed you to understand how long Silas has been in my life. Then silence. By day 2, she tried again. I hate how we left things. I miss you. I didn't respond. It wasn't about punishment. I wasn't trying to teach her a lesson. I just needed space. Real space. The kind where I could hear my own thoughts without hers echoing over every one of them. So I threw myself into work. Leveled floors. Sanded drywall. Installed crown molding so precisely it looked like it had grown there. There's something beautiful about craftsmanship when your hands create something solid, measurable, true. Unlike feelings, unlike relationships, unlike words that can be rearranged and denied. Wood doesn't lie. It fits or it doesn't. Each night, I came home to my quiet apartment. No music. No laughter. No half-used bottles of wine in the fridge. Just me in the silence. At first, it felt hollow. Then it started to feel honest. On the 4th night, I opened her last message. It read, I'm sorry. I know you need time, but please don't disappear without giving us a chance to fix this. I care about you, Miles. I really do. Maybe I didn't say it right, but I need you to know I didn't mean to hurt you. I stared at those words for a long time. My thumb hovered over the keyboard. I even typed something once, then deleted it. It wasn't about her words anymore. It was about mine. Because somewhere along the line, I'd made myself smaller to avoid conflict. Let things slide because I wanted the story to work out. I'd hoped that if I just gave her time, she'd see me the way I saw her. But that night at the dinner, when she looked at him and not at me, when she said he mattered more, without flinching, that wasn't a mistake. That was her truth. And now, I had to decide what mine was. I heard the knock before I saw her. 3 soft taps. Then a pause. Then one more, like she wasn't sure if she should follow through. I was sitting on the floor of my living room, legs stretched out, half a sandwich in my hand that I wasn't hungry enough to finish. It was a Thursday night, and the rain had started maybe an hour before, tapping on the windows like a metronome. I didn't move at first. I knew who it was. Sometimes, silence tells you more than any ringtone ever could. Another knock. Quieter this time. Hesitant. I stood, wiped my hands on my jeans, and opened the door. There she was. Rain. Her hair was soaked at the edges, curls clinging to her neck. Her eyes were swollen, red-rimmed. No umbrella. No pretense. Just her, in a hoodie too thin for the weather and a vulnerability I hadn't seen before, not even that night on the deck when she chose Silas. She didn't say anything at first. Her lips parted, but whatever she meant to say got caught in her throat. I just stepped aside and let her in. She crossed the threshold like someone entering a confessional. Her shoes left wet marks on the hardwood. I shut the door gently behind her. She turned to face me, still shaking slightly, not from the cold, I realized, but from whatever storm had hit her long before she stepped out into the rain. I didn't know where else to go, she whispered. You always had somewhere, I said. You just never chose it. She flinched like I'd slapped her, and I immediately hated myself for saying it like that. But I didn't take it back. I couldn't. She reached up, wiped her face with her sleeve. I messed up, Miles. I know I did. I motioned toward the couch. She sat down slowly, carefully, as though afraid the furniture might reject her too. I came because I needed to say it in person, not a text. Not some carefully typed apology that makes me sound more put together than I actually am. She looked at me with glassy eyes. You didn't deserve what I said. Not that night. Not ever. I sat in the armchair across from her, my hands clasped tightly. But you did say it, Rain. That's what I keep coming back to. You said it like it was fact. I know. Her voice cracked. And that's the part that eats at me. We sat there in silence for a beat. The rain outside had picked up, tapping more insistently against the windows. I didn't mean it, she said finally. I swear to you, I didn't mean it. But you did, I replied, voice even. That's why it hurt so much. You didn't stutter. You didn't hesitate. You told me exactly where I stood. Second place. She nodded, eyes dropping to her hands. You're right. I said it because in that moment, I panicked. I saw Silas storm off and I reverted. It's what I've always done with him. Keep the peace. Say what keeps him from blowing up, even if it costs someone else. I know. Her voice broke completely then, and she buried her face in her hands. I hate that about myself. I watched her crumble in front of me, part of me wanting to go to her, the other part gripping the chair like it would float me away from the wreckage. When she finally looked up, her makeup had smudged beneath her eyes. He's been in my life so long, Miles. Since college. Every breakup I've ever had, he was there, offering advice, planting doubts. I thought he was protecting me, but now I see it wasn't protection. It was control. I stayed quiet. I wanted to give her space to dig her way out, not toss her a ladder just yet. He's done this before, she went on. To other men. To me. My sister warned me. Becca too. But I defended him. Every time. I nodded slowly. And the night of the dinner? She looked ashamed. I was so afraid of losing control of the situation, I tried to manage everyone instead of being honest with anyone. Including you. I panicked when I saw you standing your ground. Not because you were wrong, but because I'd never seen someone not bend for him. There it was. The real issue. Not just Silas. Not just her words. But the way I threatened the order of things she'd always known. I leaned forward, elbows on my knees. I don't hate you, Rain. But I can't go back to being the guy who waits in the wings while you figure out where I fit. You're not, she said quickly. You never were. I just didn't see how much space I'd let Silas take up in my head until you walked away. And the silence that followed, it made me listen to the noise I'd gotten too used to. I looked at her. Really looked. And I saw it. Something had cracked open in her. Something that hadn't been there before. Not regret. Not desperation. But truth. I'm not asking to fix everything tonight, she said. I just want to start again. With honesty. Even if it means starting over. I didn't answer right away. I stood, walked to the kitchen, poured 2 glasses of water. When I came back, I handed her one and sat again. I need space, I said. Not to punish you, but because I need to be sure I'm not stepping back into something that's still shaped like someone else. She nodded. I can respect that. We sat in the quiet for a while, just sipping water and listening to the rain. No promises. No kisses. Just the faint hope that maybe, not now, not yet, but maybe, there was still something worth rebuilding. Something on level ground. It had been 3 days since Rain showed up at my door, and I hadn't heard from her since. I didn't expect to. She meant what she said, space. Real space. The kind of silence that can either settle things or expose the cracks too deep to patch. I've been filling the time with work, as usual. Fixing a sagging porch in Oak Ridge, framing out a sunroom in East Hollow, staying out later than usual so I didn't have to sit in my own apartment staring at empty chairs. On a late afternoon, just as I was packing up my tools into the truck, my phone buzzed with a number I didn't recognize. I hesitated. Unknown numbers rarely bring anything good. But something nudged me to answer. Hello? Is this Miles Carter? The voice was sharp but familiar, like someone who knew how to command attention without raising her volume. Yes. Speaking. It's Bryn, Rain's sister. That stopped me in my tracks. I'd only met Bryn once, briefly, during one of the early cafe meetings. She'd come in for coffee, offered a polite hello, and left with a look that I couldn't read at the time. Now, that unreadable look suddenly had a voice. I hope it's okay, I got your number from Rain's phone. I didn't ask her, I just needed to talk to you. I leaned against the open tailgate of my truck. All right, go ahead. She sighed on the other end, not the kind of sigh that signaled fatigue, but the kind you give right before stepping on a live wire. I just wanted to say I saw what happened. Not the whole thing, but enough. And I think you handled it better than anyone else ever has. Handled what? Silas, she said bluntly. That toxic parasite. I blinked. Well, that's not exactly the family-friendly title he goes by. She laughed bitterly. Oh, don't worry, he doesn't like me much. I stopped worshiping him when I was 15. Rain never quite got there. There was a pause, heavy and charged. Why are you telling me this now? I asked. Because you stood up to him. At that dinner. No one's ever done that. Not her ex-husband, not her old boyfriends, not even my parents. Silas always finds a way to twist things until he's the misunderstood hero. But you? You didn't play his game. And I wanted to tell you, I saw that. I swallowed hard, not sure what to say to that. Praise wasn't something I sought, especially not for something that came at the cost of a relationship. He's always been like this, she continued. Possessive. Territorial. But he's smart, he does it under the radar. Plays the caring friend. The devoted protector. But really, he undermines everyone Rain gets close to. Plants little seeds. Makes her question them. Then pulls away just enough to make her feel like he's the only constant. And she doesn't see it? I asked, more to myself than to her. She doesn't want to. That's the difference. Rain believes loyalty is owed if it's old enough. She thinks time equals truth. She confuses longevity with love. I let those words sink in, because they were exactly what I hadn't been able to articulate myself. Rain didn't love Silas, not romantically. But she'd let him root so deeply into her life that she didn't question his weight on her choices. Bryn continued. You know her ex-husband? Silas told him things Rain had confided during hard times. Told him she was confused. That maybe she wasn't ready for the kind of life he wanted. The man filed for separation a month later. Rain never even suspected the connection. My jaw clenched. And she still trusts him after that? She doesn't know. I only found out later from a mutual friend. But when I tried to tell her, she shut down. Said I was being dramatic. Said Silas would never do that. That tracks, I muttered. He's got a way of making you feel like you're the irrational one. Exactly, Bryn said. But the thing is, Miles, she's trying now. I know her. I've never seen her this raw. This honest. The version of her that came home after your fight? That was someone waking up. I looked out across the lot where my truck was parked. The sun was sinking low behind the trees, casting long shadows across the dirt. The world felt quiet, except for Bryn's voice echoing in my ear. She's not perfect, Bryn added. But she's not blind anymore either. And that's because of you. I exhaled slowly. So what are you asking me, Bryn? Nothing, she said. Just don't write her off because of him. She didn't just lose you that night. She lost her safety net. And maybe, for the first time, She's realizing she never needed it to begin with. I didn't respond right away. There was a part of me that wanted to hang on to the anger, to the clarity that came from feeling wronged. But the other part, the part that watched rain cry in my apartment, the part that remembered how she'd once looked at me like I was more than just a man with a hammer and a guarded heart, that part was listening. Thanks for calling, I said finally. She'll probably be mad when she finds out, Bryn said with a dry laugh. Let her be, I replied. Truth doesn't need permission. After we hung up, I sat in my truck for a long time. Didn't turn on the radio, didn't check my messages. Just sat there with the weight of everything Bryn had said. And for the first time since that night on the deck, I didn't feel like the outsider anymore. I felt like someone who had seen the rot beneath the frame. And maybe, just maybe, I wasn't the one who needed fixing. The text came in at 8:03 a.m. on a Wednesday. Can we talk? Neutral place. Please. I stared at it for a full minute before responding. Where? She suggested the park, Linden Row, the one with the stone bridge and iron benches no one ever sat on because they were always just a little too cold, a little too damp. It wasn't far from the cafe, but it was quiet, secluded. Probably her idea of neutral. I arrived 5 minutes early. Rain was already there, seated on the edge of the fountain, her hands clasped between her knees. She looked smaller somehow, like something had folded inward. No makeup, no dramatic clothes. Just a navy windbreaker, jeans, and that same tired beauty I'd noticed the first time we met, only this time, it wasn't worn. It was raw. I walked up slowly. She looked up and gave me a tight, uncertain smile. Thanks for coming. I nodded but didn't sit right away. So? She took a breath, then another. I started therapy. That caught me off guard. It's been 2 weeks. I should have told you, but I wanted to be sure I'd actually follow through before I made it a headline. Her voice was steady, almost rehearsed. But her eyes were different. Clearer. Not polished. Not placating. Just honest. That's good, I said, still standing. I'm glad you're doing something for yourself. I didn't go for Silas, she added quickly. I went because I needed to understand why I let him keep pulling the strings. Why I kept defending him even when I knew it was wrong. She motioned for me to sit, and this time I did. The cold from the stone seeped through my jeans almost instantly. We sat side by side, a careful foot of space between us. I read back through his texts, she said, pulling out her phone. I never really paid attention before. But once I did, I saw it. The guilt tripping. The manipulation. How every message circled back to me owing him something: time, loyalty, silence. She scrolled for a second, then held up the screen to show me. I can't believe you're letting someone come between us after all these years. You've changed. Not in a good way. You think he'll stay when things get hard? Newsflash, he won't. I read them, then looked at her. He said that. She nodded, her throat tight. Every time I pulled away even a little, he doubled down. The night of the dinner, he sent one right before you got there. She showed me. Don't let him run the show. Remember who was there when your life fell apart. My stomach turned. Jesus. He knew what he was doing, she whispered. I think he always did. And you didn't see it? I saw pieces of it. But I kept convincing myself it was love. Just the wrong kind. I leaned back, the bench pressing into my shoulders. So why tell me all this now? She turned to face me fully, the wind catching her hair and pushing it across her face. Because I need you to know I'm not defending him anymore. And I'm not here asking for you to come back or forgive me. I'm here because I need to own what I let happen. I let him sabotage what we had. I let him manipulate my decisions. And I hurt you because I was still living by his rules. I looked away for a moment, watching a kid toss breadcrumbs to a flock of pigeons. The sound of traffic buzzed in the distance, low and constant like a bad memory you can't quite forget. So where do you go from here? I asked. I cut him off, she said. Blocked his number. Told him not to come to the cafe. Told Becca and Bryn and everyone in between that I'm done making excuses for him. I raised a brow. And how'd he take that? Her smile was brittle, like a man who's never heard no before. She reached into her bag and pulled out a folder. I've been writing things down. For therapy. Letters I won't send. Memories I'm trying to sort. I wrote one about you. I didn't reach for it. I wasn't ready. Not for you to read, she added. Just to tell you that you mattered. That what we had, what we might still have, it meant something to me, even if I treated it like it didn't. My throat tightened. I rubbed my palms against my jeans, grounding myself. So what now? She shrugged. Now I keep going. I keep showing up to therapy. I keep being honest. even when it's ugly, even when I want to deflect or blame or fix someone else instead of fixing myself. And me? I asked carefully, where do I fit in all of that? She looked at me, steady and sure. Wherever you want to. I'm not here to convince you to forgive me. I'm not offering promises I can't keep. But if you ever want to talk again, really talk. Not as boyfriend and girlfriend, not even as friends, just as two people who care, then I'll be here. No pressure. No expectations. I stared at her for a long moment. The silence wasn't heavy this time. It was spacious. Honest. I'll think about it, I said. That's all I ask. She stood, slung her bag over her shoulder. Thank you for listening. Then she turned and walked away, not looking back. And for the first time since this mess began, I felt something loosen inside me. Not closure, but the start of something better than that. Clarity. It was a Tuesday night when I got the call. I was in my shop, tinkering with a broken cabinet hinge that didn't need fixing but gave my hands something to do. The sawdust in the air had started to settle, and the world was quiet in that way it only gets when no one expects anything from you. Then my phone rang, and her name lit up the screen. Rain. I hesitated for a full 3 rings before answering. Hey, I said, trying to keep my voice even. Her words rushed out like they'd been waiting at the door too long. Miles, he showed up at my place. I straightened. What? Silas. He was drunk. Angry. He just showed up, yelling, banging on the door. I called the cops. My body moved before my brain caught up. I grabbed my keys. Are you okay? I'm shaken. But yes. I didn't let him in. He screamed for 5 minutes straight and then started kicking the mailbox. He's gone now. They took a report, but I'm filing for a restraining order. I stopped moving. That wasn't just a boundary. That was a wall. That was her drawing a line where there'd never been one before. I wanted to tell you myself. Before you heard it from someone else. I'm on my way. Miles. I'm not coming to fix anything, I said, quietly. I'm coming to stand by you. If you want me there. She didn't answer with words. Just a breath. A soft sound that said yes. When I got there, the front door had a new crack in the frame where he'd kicked it. A flower pot was shattered on the steps. Rain stood in a sweatshirt and leggings, arms wrapped around herself, eyes puffy but focused. She didn't cry when she saw me. She didn't collapse into my arms. She just opened the door and let me in. We sat on the couch in silence for a long time. She clutched a warm mug of tea like it was her only anchor to the present. You did the right thing, I said finally. She nodded. I wasn't sure if I was overreacting. Part of me still thought maybe I provoked him. I looked her in the eye. That's not your guilt to carry. She blinked fast, like she was fighting the instinct to make excuses for him. It's strange. I used to think I owed him. For being there when things were hard. For sticking around when others left. You don't owe someone your peace just because they stayed long enough to poison it. She smiled, barely. My therapist said something similar. She called it emotional entrapment. Like being in a house where the fire alarm goes off constantly, and eventually, you stop noticing the smoke. And tonight? I asked. Tonight I saw the flames. She told me about the texts that escalated in the last week. How he accused her of abandoning him, betraying their history, being manipulated by me. She said he'd called 27 times in one night. Left voicemails, some pleading, others full of venom. He said he needed me, that he was nothing without me. Then 2 messages later, he said I'd ruined him, and he hoped I was proud. Classic abuser pattern, love bombing to rage, back to guilt. I'd seen it before, in people I'd worked with, even in my own marriage once things started going south. I started reconnecting with friends I'd pulled away from, she said. Old friends. People Silas always had a reason to dislike. And I realized every one of them had a version of the same warning. They just stopped saying it when I wouldn't hear it. Sounds like he made himself the filter for your entire life. She nodded. Not anymore. We talked until midnight. Nothing heavy. Just little things. How work was going. The smell of her neighbor's terrible cooking. The plant she kept forgetting to water that somehow wouldn't die. The kind of conversation you have when you're trying to reclaim something normal. I didn't stay the night. I didn't even kiss her when I left. I just held her for a while on the porch. And she whispered, "Thank you for not making this about us." "This isn't about us," I said. "This is about you, learning to live without him in your head." In the days that followed, she changed in ways that didn't require declarations. She cut off shared passwords, changed locks, deleted old voicemails. reached out to her sister and Becca and apologized for all the years she defended him. She showed up for therapy even on days she didn't want to talk. She stopped blaming herself. And she didn't ask me to come back. That mattered most, because it meant she wasn't trying to fill the void he left with me. Her world started widening. I saw her laugh again, freely. I saw her at the cafe, talking to a new employee without worrying what Silas would think. I heard her talk about the future without factoring him in. And each time, I felt a quiet pride. Not because she was healing for me, but because she was healing for herself. We didn't rush back into anything. I kept my distance, not emotionally, but physically. I wanted her to have space to grow without me hovering. I answered when she called, showed up when she asked, but I didn't press. I didn't probe. One afternoon, she texted me a photo of a bookshelf she'd built herself, crooked but solid. The caption read, "Didn't wait for a man this time. Feels good." And it did. For both of us. That was the moment I knew something had shifted. Not just in her, but in me. I didn't feel like I was fighting for room in her life anymore. I wasn't a rival to a ghost. I wasn't a placeholder while she wrestled with someone else's grip. She was letting go. And for the first time, she was holding on to herself. We didn't jump back into it. There were no grand declarations. No candlelit dinners with whispered apologies. Rain and I approached each other like people approaching a house after a storm. Carefully, with eyes on the cracks, hearts guarded but curious. She was rebuilding her life on new terms, and I refused to be another shortcut to comfort. I wanted real. She needed real. Anything less would have just reset the cycle. We started slow. Coffee first, then walks. Sometimes at the cafe before opening, sometimes at the lake near her apartment. We talked, but not like lovers trying to mend something broken. More like people finally learning each other without pretense. I remember one morning in particular. We were sitting outside the cafe, sipping dark roast from mismatched mugs, the kind you only find in old diners or someone's second kitchen drawer. The sky was still half asleep, sun just cracking over the rooftops, and Rain looked over at me with something quiet in her expression. "I've been thinking about the difference between rebuilding and patching," she said. I nodded, waiting. In the past, I was always patching things, holding them together long enough to not deal with what was underneath. But patching doesn't last. It just hides the damage. And people are terrible at hiding damage. "You're not the only one," I said. I stayed married for 3 years after I should have left. Told myself I was fixing things, but all I was doing was repainting the rot. She smiled sadly. "You and me. A couple of professionals at Emotional Drywall." That morning, she invited me to a therapy session. Not because we were officially back together, but because, in her words, if we're going to try again, I want to know what I'm inviting you into, and I want you to know what you're inviting. It was a small office tucked above a bookstore, with lavender walls and the faint smell of chamomile tea. Her therapist, Dr. Hanley, greeted me with a handshake that was firm but not overbearing, like someone who'd learned to navigate trauma without needing to prove she could fix it. "I'm glad you're here," she said. "This isn't about blame. It's about clarity." I sat across from Rain, and for the first time, heard her speak about Silas without defense or distortion. "He was a foundation I never inspected," she said. "I built friendships, decisions, and relationships on top of him. And I didn't realize until recently that I was living in a structure that wasn't stable." Dr. Hanley nodded. "It's not uncommon, especially when someone positions themselves as irreplaceable. They make you question your instincts, make you believe your survival depends on their presence." I asked something that had been clawing at the back of my mind. "Was there ever a time you believed him more than you believed me?" Rain looked down. "Yes, but it wasn't about you. It was about how conditioned I was to default to his version of the story. You challenged that, and I didn't know how to hold two conflicting truths." She looked back up. "But I'm learning." I believed her. Not because of the words, but because she wasn't trying to win me back with them. She wasn't reaching for me to fill a gap. She was standing on her own feet, with her own voice, in a room where she didn't owe me anything. That night, as we walked out into the warm spring air, she reached for my hand, not in desperation, but in invitation. We started dating again, not with fireworks or declarations. It was more like rediscovering a trail you once walked and seeing it with new eyes. We still had awkward pauses, still had days where her walls crept back up and I had to decide whether to press or give her space. But something had changed. She didn't shrink around me anymore, and I didn't feel like I had to carry both our weight just to stay close. One weekend, she invited me to help her rearrange her apartment. A symbolic fresh start, she called it. We moved the couch, replaced the rug she said Silas had picked out years ago, and hung up new shelves in the hallway. As I drilled into the plaster, she stood beside me, a level in one hand and a small notebook in the other. "What's that?" I asked. "My reminders," she said. "Things I've learned. Stuff I need to unlearn." She handed it to me. The first page read, 1. History is not currency. 2. Loyalty without boundaries is a trap. 3. Love doesn't have to hurt to be real. I handed it back carefully. "That's one hell of a blueprint. I figured you'd appreciate the structure," she said with a smirk. Even Becca, her friend from the cafe, pulled me aside one day to say, "She's lighter. It's not just you. She's freer." And it's the first time I've ever seen her actually choose someone without Silas hovering like a ghost in the corner. There was one night, late, when we sat on the balcony outside her bedroom. Just the two of us and the hum of the city beyond. "I want to earn this," Rain said. "Not assume it. I want to be worthy of the second chance you didn't know me." "You don't have to earn me," I said. "Just don't disappear into someone else again. That's all I ask." She rested her head on my shoulder, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was competing with a memory. She was here, with me, on level ground. The silence was different now. It wasn't the suffocating kind, the kind that used to stretch between Rain and me like a wire, taut and ready to snap. This silence was earned, comfortable. It followed laughter instead of replacing it. On most nights, we sat in it with cups of tea or shared playlists, each of us reading or scrolling or just breathing beside the other. No tension, no second-guessing. The kind of quiet that comes after a storm, when the roof holds and the windows don't rattle anymore. It had been 3 months since the restraining order against Silas was filed. 2 since it expired. I won't lie, part of me waited for the other shoe to drop. A drive-by, a text, a casual run-in at the cafe, or one of the local bookstores he used to haunt. But nothing. Not a sighting. Not a whisper. Instead, the echo of him lingered in smaller ways. Mutual acquaintances with too much curiosity. Questions masked as concern. "Haven't seen Silas around lately. Everything okay with you two?" Or worse, "It's just weird not seeing him here." You two were like a package deal. Rain had stopped flinching when those comments came. She didn't get defensive or apologetic. She'd just nod and say, "That chapter's closed." Simple, clean, not cruel, but final. And when some people chose not to believe her, when they muttered things or distanced themselves, she let them. No begging, no proving. No mourning the ones who walked away. "I didn't lose friends," she told me one night while organizing boxes in her storage closet. "I lost people who were loyal to dysfunction. There's a difference." She was right. The more she grew into herself, the more I saw how much she'd been carrying. Not just the weight of Silas's influence, but the guilt of allowing it for so long. One night, while we were eating takeout from a Thai place down the block, she put her fork down mid-bite and said, "I used to think love was loud, that it had to come with drama or fire or some kind of grand gesture to count. But I was wrong. It's this. It's noodles and your knee brushing mine and me not needing to check my phone to feel secure." I smiled. "So, I shouldn't cancel the skywriting I booked." She laughed, really laughed, the kind that came from her belly now, not from a place trying to impress or distract. That sound had become one of my favorite things in the world. We didn't talk about Silas much anymore. Not out of avoidance, but because his absence had finally stopped being the most interesting thing in the room. Rain had filled that space with other things, her new hobbies, like painting watercolors she refused to show anyone, and hosting open mic poetry nights at the cafe. She started mentoring a younger woman who wanted to manage her own place one day, and she even brought her to one of our dinners at my place. The kind of dinner where we didn't worry about who was watching. Becca noticed the shift too. She pulled me aside after one of those open mic nights. "She's grounded," she said. "For the first time in years, she's choosing herself. Not history, not guilt, just what makes her feel alive." I nodded. "She's earning her quiet." "And you?" Becca asked. "You trust it now?" I looked over at Rain, laughing with someone near the espresso machine, her eyes bright, her hands animated. "Yeah," I said. "For the first time, I do." Then came the night that sealed it. We were walking back from the market, bags of fresh basil, pasta, and a bottle of wine for a dinner we hadn't planned beyond something cozy. It was dusk, that golden hour where even the cracked sidewalks looked cinematic. Rain paused on the steps outside her building, and looked at me with an expression I hadn't seen before. Not nervous, not unsure, just clear. I don't want anyone else deciding how I love, she said. I blinked. What do you mean? She set the bags down and faced me fully. For so long, I let Silas define what was acceptable, what was loyal. I even let other people's opinions shape my relationships. I didn't realize how many choices I made out of fear of disappointing someone, of losing approval, of being alone. She reached out and touched my chest, right over the place my heart had learned to brace itself. But not this, she said. Not us. I choose you, Miles. Without noise. Without shadow. Just you. It wasn't the words that got me. It was the silence after. The way she didn't rush to explain or qualify or soften the truth. I stepped closer. You sure? She nodded. I'm done auditioning for people who only love me when I'm convenient. I wrapped my arms around her, and for once, I didn't feel like I was holding something fragile. I felt like I was holding someone steady. Someone who'd stopped leaning on old scaffolding and started standing on her own. Later that night, as we ate on her balcony, legs tangled beneath the blanket, she reached for my hand and said, "This is the kind of quiet I want for the rest of my life." And I knew then, this wasn't a rebound. It wasn't healing masquerading as romance. It was two people choosing each other not because they had to, but because they finally could. No more ghosts. No more noise. Just us. Choosing each other in the quiet. 6 months later, I no longer felt like I was waiting to be replaced. Rain and I had moved in together just after her lease expired, quietly, carefully, like people who had learned the value of slow steps. No grand announcement. No social media post with matching keys. Just a quiet Sunday morning with cardboard boxes, shared coffee, and the kind of laughter that comes when two people have survived something that once threatened to swallow them whole. She moved into my house, but we made it ours. We repainted the kitchen a pale green she'd picked out herself, and I didn't argue, even when I thought it looked like mint ice cream. We built a new bookshelf together, properly this time, level and straight, and she joked that it was symbolic of our growth. I told her she was reading too much into things. Then I kissed her. We argued sometimes, of course. No couple is immune. But now, there were no slammed doors. No withheld apologies. If we fought, we circled back. Talked. Listened. Grew. I didn't fear her silence anymore, and she no longer feared my disappointment. One evening, while folding laundry on our bed, she said, "You know what the difference is now?" I looked up. What? I don't brace myself when I hear your truck pull into the driveway. I don't rehearse lines in my head or wonder if I've done something wrong. I sat down beside her, a t-shirt still in my hands. And I don't feel like I'm tiptoeing around someone's unspoken rules. I'm not afraid of becoming invisible. She leaned her head on my shoulder. We're not trying to survive each other anymore. We're trying to build something. That's what it had become, a partnership. Balanced, honest. She didn't fold into me, and I didn't try to carry her. We walked side by side. When I struggled with a difficult project or worried about my daughter Jess's silence during her teenage moods, Rain listened, really listened. Not to solve, not to fix, but to understand. And when she had bad days, when the residue of old fears flared up, when the anxiety whispered that she still wasn't enough, I didn't minimize it. I didn't compare. I simply stayed. Reminded her with actions that she was safe. That I wasn't going anywhere just because the air got heavy. Silas was truly gone now. Not just out of her phone, but out of her system. A few weeks after she moved in, he tried again, an email this time. A long, guilt-soaked message filled with nostalgia, passive-aggressive regret, and a list of everything they'd been through. She showed it to me without hesitation, her fingers trembling less from fear and more from the gravity of closure. "I don't even want to respond," she said. "Then don't," I told her. "He doesn't deserve your clarity." She blocked the address, deleted the thread, then looked at me with this quiet fire in her eyes and said, "I'm not afraid of him anymore. I'm just done." She meant it. I knew it then. The weight she used to carry like a second skin had finally slipped off. She made new friends, reconnected with old ones, started saying yes to things that once overwhelmed her, invites, small trips, uncomfortable conversations. Her confidence grew in the subtle ways that matter most, her posture, her voice, the way she looked people in the eye. Even Jessa noticed. "She's not like other women you've dated," my daughter said one afternoon after joining us for brunch. "No," I said, smiling. "She's not. She sees you." I nodded. "She does." Rain had become part of Jess's rhythm, 2. Not a replacement for her mother, never that, but a steady presence. Someone who remembered her favorite tea and didn't force awkward conversations. Someone who asked how school was and actually remembered the answer. Sometimes, I'd wake up in the middle of the night, feel Rain's hand resting lightly on my chest, and just stare at the ceiling, amazed at how quiet the room felt. Not empty, not tense, just still. That kind of stillness takes work. It takes walking through fire and coming out willing to love without the armor. It takes choosing someone daily, not because you need to, but because you want to. On our 6-month living together mark, she surprised me with a small dinner on the back patio. Nothing fancy, just steaks, wine, and a few fairy lights strung from the railing. She wore a simple black dress, her hair tied back, barefoot like she always was at home. "You remember the first night you grilled here?" she asked. "Hard to forget," I said. Silas trying to micromanage the temperature. She winced playfully. "God, we were so far from this." "Yeah," I said, reaching for her hand. "But maybe we had to go through that to get here." She looked at me. I soughed. "Do you ever wonder if I'm still haunted by him?" I didn't lie. "Sometimes. But then I see you now, and I know you're not haunted. You're aware. There's a difference." She nodded, and for the first time, I saw her take that in without flinching. Later, after the dishes were washed and the lights dimmed, we sat on the couch, legs entwined, her head on my chest. She whispered, "I'm sorry for ever making you feel like second." I kissed her forehead. "I'm not angry anymore. Because you chose better. And this time, you meant it." There were no fireworks. No grand music playing in the background. Just the hum of the dishwasher, the rhythm of two hearts resting side by side, and the feeling that, for the first time, we weren't rebuilding on shaky ground. We were standing on something solid. Together. Equal.